I want to get straight to the point on it and not get too deep into it, because there's a lot of avenues you can go with this. And for the most part, I'll keep going. All right. It's important. Why is confidentiality, why do you think it is important to your deacon and deacon family relationship? What is the importance of confidentiality? Yes? Trust. Builds trust, right? Trust is one of those things that is a principle and a foundation block for every good relationship. Is there anything else? Did anyone else have any other pointers? That's what I have. It really points to trust. Confidentiality does, right? When we are confident that the person we're confiding in is not going to air all of our dirty laundry out in front of everybody, right? That builds a trusting relationship. And when someone we find out does do that, what does that do? They air kind of what we've told them. What happens when we tell somebody, when we find out someone else has been talking behind our back or sharing maybe our secrets? What happens in that scenario? Betrayed. You don't want to talk to him again. You don't want to share with him again. You don't trust him, right? And so as deacons, keeping that confidential mindset is really important. And there's two things that I wanted to suggest that you kind of err on. And the reason being is this. Confidentiality, we think of it, when we think of those moments maybe where our own confidentiality was broken or violated, we think of it as very malicious. Like, how dare they do that, right? But I would suggest, and we would suggest, that most of the time when confidentiality is broken, it's on accident and it's unintentional. Because gossip is a very tricky and kind of deceiving thing, right? Sometimes, of course, there are people that do it on purpose, but a lot of times it's not intentional. And it's because of the old human sin, right, Pastor Mike? Where when we know something about someone else and we have the opportunity to share it, it makes us feel special, right? And so we might share more than we actually should. And so the two kind of rules or two things that I would say that you should err on is always, 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 like Pastor Joe was saying in the beginning, always ask what you can share, or use exactly how it was. This sounds like something that Pastor Joe or Pastor Mike would like to know. Can I share this with them? Always, always ask. Just like when it came to prayer, you should always ask about what their requests are, what their prayers are. Always ask if you can share what you've been told with our pastors. Or when it comes to the prayers, always ask, can we put this on the prayer chain? And you do so, and I think we'll go over that with reporting. Will we?
Sure.
Or not? Just email it to Pastor Mike and he'll put it on the prayer chain. There you go. Always ask. Just simply always ask. If you don't ask, and you don't get an answer, or you don't know whether or not, then you shouldn't share it. You just shouldn't share it until you get that confirmation from them. And it goes the same with prayers and prayer requests. If they say, my daughter's in the hospital, if you don't ask, can we put it on the prayer chain, I would say don't put it on the prayer chain until you have that confirmation from them. And then two, when it comes to being in the public and outside of kind of, whether it be on the patio after church or whatnot, just do your best to simply just not talk about the families that you're deaconing. And I know that might be difficult. Some of you might have really good relationships with them. So there might be some tough times, or there might be times where you have to counterbalance what is appropriate, what is not. But for the most part, if you find yourself in a conversation where someone is about them, recuse yourself and know that you carry a different kind of responsibility with them. And you harbor that. And that's a privilege, and that's great, right? That's awesome, because it goes back to that relationship that you get to have and the opportunity that you have with them.
I find when folks feel like they are inclined to share something that was expressed in confidence, it comes down to, so where is your heart in doing so?
Yeah.
And there is actually a very good-hearted, but perhaps maybe a little short-sighted path to where you might do that. When someone has told you something and they're really heavy on your mind, and you like to have the strength of others, to deal with that, but they don't know what to do with that information necessarily either. But God does.
Yeah.
So if you need to tell somebody, if it's on your heart and you just have to tell somebody,
Yeah.
always seems pretty safe to tell God.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's always nothing wrong with going directly to God with
I'm
that.
not sure if this is going to be covered later, but sometimes if someone's sharing something with you, it's really burdensome on your heart.
Mm-hmm.
So is there going to be follow-up with the deacons where, like when we had Stephen ministers, there was a time when the ministers
Yeah.
got together and supported each other in that direction.
Well, please step in, but I would say my first answer would be that you all will have your own deacon, right? Well, deacons have deaconed. So you will have, so within this room you'll have one another, and that's built in specifically for that. And then to kind of touch on it too, that if, on the bottom it says, when do we break confidentiality? Because there are some times maybe where you have to. The first principle I'd give you on that one is limit the brokenness, right? So keep that in mind. As deacons, your main reporting to, in a sense, is to Pastor Joe and Pastor Mike, right? Those are the people that are trying to get the information. It sounds data mining. But, so those are the people that you would go to if you're going to break it. Not me, but go to them. That's who you'd go to. And if you're unsure of whether, because let's say, for instance, if someone talks about life-threatening circumstances, if they're going to place their own life in harm, or they're placing someone else's life in harm, you break confidentiality, right? And there's different ways. This is why I'm not trying to get in everything, because the reason being is, too, don't think that's going to happen a whole lot in this ministry, right? This is mostly keeping in touch, making sure everyone's okay. To keep it in the background, there are times that there might be times where you have to share something. But if you're going to share that, share it in confidence with a pastor, not with maybe your best friend or even your deacon itself. Go directly to Pastor Joe or Pastor Mike. Does that sound good? Limit any sort of broken confidentiality. Does that make sense? And of course, maybe the first person you go to is the Lord. But those are good questions. Which got me kind of through what I was going to talk about there. Is there any questions about confidentiality? Other than that, I wanted to keep it short because I know we can go all over. Yes?
Well, so like Barb and I are deacons together, right? So
Yeah.
we could share between us, right? Or is that?
Are they have they separate families?
I believe you will have the same families as it is.
Probably use your judgment, I would think,
Yeah.
don't you think?
Well, your first point,
Common
ask.
sense.
Ask.
Can I
Yeah.
share this with?
That's always a great one. Always ask. And if you're coupled up together, ask your partners if you're ministering to the same families, right? And so you can ask, hey, can I talk to Barb about this too? And that's one thing I don't envy you on with. Yeah, go ahead.
You don't have to give up the names of the person too. I mean, you can
Yeah.
you can do a generalization to you. Hey,
Yes.
Stephen, here's what's bugging me about you.
Yeah, we're human beings. You all probably have the skill and understand how to talk around some things, right?
I have this friend.
I have a friend. There's a youth director at our church with red hair. Not
I'm
that
not
specific.
saying who.
Yeah.
But
Who's gonna get fired? No, I'm kidding. You can talk around things, right? We all kind of understand how to do that, but I wouldn't do that. I'd say err on not doing that. That's only for the grave circumstances if you're unsure. And that, once again, I would say that should always go directly to Pastor Joe or Pastor Mike, because then we're keeping it limited, right? And they will probably, in fact, you know what? This is would be my one suggestion. If there is something like that, go to Pastor Joe and say, there's something in my deacon ministry right now that's heavy on my heart, and I don't know whether or not I should or should not share it.
Yeah.
And then let him prompt you in the most appropriate, and he will, and Pastor Mike will, because they've been doing this long enough. And they will help you decide whether or not it's time for you to do that. But go directly to them. And so if there is that circumstance, go to them. And don't just air it, but just say, there's something going on. I don't know if I should share it or not. And they'll pick up the pieces from there. They'll ask the questions that need to be asked. That's the simplest, right? So always ask what you can share. Err on, limiting how you're talking about the folks that you're ministering to in the public. And in those grave circumstances, go to Pastor Joe and Pastor Mike. Sound good? Anything else? I think I'm done.
Awesome.